I'll never forget the sound that split our quiet mountain morning, the dry metallic snick of cuffs closing on Alicia's wrists as a woman in knockoff tactical gear yelled, "Freeze! You're under arrest for illegal planting." Illegal planting of marigolds. My wife, Alicia Reed, fifth-grade teacher, home-cooked genius and the softest heart I know, was on her knees in our front bed, palms dirty and joyful, when three strangers with badges that looked real from 10 feet away converged like they were serving a felony warrant. The woman barked orders, a twitchy guy parroted Miranda from a phone app, and a third hovered with a clipboard as if paperwork could manufacture authority. Neighbors drifted to the gravel shoulder to watch, and I heard the word that always hits different when it's aimed at black folks: suspicious. We were suspicious for being new. We were suspicious for not parking our truck exactly the way the old guard preferred. And now, apparently, we were suspicious for wanting color in our garden. My name is Marcus Reed. I've spent 18 years as a federal law enforcement officer tracking fugitives, commanding arrest teams, and supervising operations I can't talk about at barbecues. People assume that means I lead with my badge. I don't. I lead with procedure and patience because I've seen what happens when those go missing. But this wasn't a tactical takedown. This was theater, cheap, desperate theater, staged by people who believed a clipboard and a camera could make them the law. The morning had started like a commercial for peace. Blue Colorado sky, sun lying warm across our cedar porch, fresh coffee doing that little curl of steam above the mug. Alicia pulled on her faded Spellman sweatshirt, kissed my cheek, and carried a flat of yellow marigolds outside like they were newborns. We bought the cabin on the ridge outside Evergreen precisely to escape HOA wars, unincorporated county land, no architectural review committee, no one measuring the height of your grass with a ruler. That's what the realtor said. That's what the deed said. That's what the county website said. Still, I clocked a woman across the lane watching us through binoculars. She had the posture of someone who believes rules are a religion and she's the only ordained minister. Gray-streaked bun, crisp white polo, khaki pants sharp enough to cut you, a laminated card on a lanyard that flashed like a badge if you were wishful or gullible. She scribbled notes, raised the binoculars again, and when Alicia waved, because my wife always leads with kindness, the woman lowered the lenses and disappeared into her house without so much as a nod. If you're black in America, you are born with a weather app installed behind your eyes. It forecasts moods, rooms, the way a face hardens when it sees you. Alicia's forecast shifted when the binoculars came out, cloudy with a chance of trouble. "Baby, she's been staring for 10 minutes, she called through the open window. Creepy type of staring. I looked, shrugged, told her not to let a bored neighbor ruin a perfect day. That was my mistake. In the city, I can feel trouble 2 blocks out. But out here, with pine sap in the air and a blue jay heckling from the split rail, I underweighted her need to control and overestimated our right to simply exist without it being a spectacle. At 10:17 a.m., she marched across the lane with a bright yellow measuring tape in one hand and a camera in the other, flanked by 2 people who looked like they'd borrowed authority from a costume store. "Excuse me?" the woman said in a tone that made the word feel like a summons. "I need to document these plantings for the violation report." She crouched, click, 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 narrating. "Non-approved species. Installed without ARC consent. Frontage visibility breach." The younger man wore a navy shirt with Velcro patches, certified security and community standards enforcement, like he'd achieved rank at a kiosk. The older woman in a polyester blazer clutched a clipboard marked incident log. Their eyes slid over me, then stuck on Alicia with that mix of curiosity and suspicion reserved for black women who dare to stand their ground. "Ma'am," I said, keeping my voice even, "you're on private property." "We're not in an HOA." The leader smiled like a traffic cop who thinks the quota is a moral crusade. "I'm Laurel Carpenter, Neighborhood Standards Coordinator. Article 47B prohibits non-native species in visible beds. You have 2 hours to remediate before enforcement." The security guy stepped forward. "Rob Willis, Community Security Supervisor," he said, extending a hand I didn't shake. "We're here to support compliance." The other introduced herself as Margaret, a retired teacher assisting with documentation. Alicia rose slowly, wiping soil from her palms. "We're planting flowers," she said, teacher calm but steel underneath. We didn't join any association, and we're outside city limits. Laurel never looked at me when she spoke, only at my wife, voice softening the way some people weaponize concern against black women. "Honey, I know it's scary when he tells you what can and can't be planted, but you don't have to protect him. Help is coming." The message underneath was familiar as sirens after dark. "We will define your reality for you." "What?" Alicia blinked. "Protect him from what?" Laurel didn't answer. She made a call instead. "It's escalating just like we practiced," she said, eyes on Alicia like she was cataloging evidence. When she left, Rob began circling our truck, writing down the plate, and Margaret measured the bed border with a tape she held backward. I guided Alicia inside. "We're fine," I told her, though my stomach had started its slow, ugly knot. "She's bluffing." Bluff turned to ambush 40 minutes later when a county cruiser rolled to the shoulder. Deputy Jim Patterson, late 50s, posture of a man who'd broken up his share of bar fights, stepped out with a tablet and the cautious look of someone called to a domestic. "Sir," he said to me, "we've received reports of intimidation and misuse of federal position." He showed me ring footage of yesterday's conversation with Laurel, heavily edited so my calm looked like looming and her clipped tone like a plea. Overlay commentary read, "Federal agent bullies elderly volunteer." Alicia squared her shoulders. "This is edited," she told him. He was polite. She trespassed. But I could see Patterson's training wrestling with his biases. You learn to read micro moves in this line of work. The split-second glance that says whose story sounds familiar. And Laurel had brought props, a faux emergency charter authorization with fresh signatures. Rob's patches, Margaret's orderly logs, and the oldest tool of all, community familiarity. "Jim," Laurel said, gliding back across the lane, freshly lipsticked and holding her phone at selfie angle. "For transparency, I'm live streaming. We're here to protect Mrs. Reed." Comments popped up in fast vertical lines on her screen. "He looks dangerous." "She seems scared." "Call CPS if there are kids." A few neighbors, folks who'd never said hello to us, stood with arms folded and faces set in that brittle way people wear when they've decided who's respectable before the facts are in. "Mrs. Reed," Patterson said gently, the tone cops use for victims even when they're not listening. "It's common for survivors to defend abusers with law enforcement ties." Something in Alicia's face cracked. Hurt, disbelief, a flare of rage that didn't have a safe place to land. "Survivor of what?" she asked. "Gardening?" Laurel leaned toward her. "You don't have to be brave for him." Rob and Margaret flanked Alicia, and in that sleight-of-hand way where protection becomes imprisonment, they guided her toward Rob's sedan. Communication collapses when lies get amplification. Laurel knew it. She floated commentary to her viewers like chum. "He's trying to flash federal credentials." "He's using power to intimidate." Comments spiked. "Fire him. Defund you. Marshals. Arrest the bully." Then Rob did the thing that detonated my patience. Cold steel on warm skin. The cuffs clicked. Alicia flinched. Margaret whispered, "You're safe now," as if duplicity could be a blanket. Call it a switch, a snap, a narrowing of focus. The moment I stopped giving civilian patience to people actively committing crimes. 18 years of training slid into place like rounds into a magazine. "Stop," I said, voice from the diaphragm, the one I use when a fugitive's hand is inching toward a waistband. "United States Marshals Service, everyone freeze." The world stuttered. Rob's phone thumped to the gravel. Margaret let go like Alicia's skin had burned her. Laurel's mouth formed a perfect O, the live stream catching everything in crisp 4K. Patterson's hand went half to his holster, then recovered when I held up my creds. "Supervisory Deputy U.S. Marshal Marcus Reed," I announced, high to the camera as well as Patterson. "This is the unlawful detention of a citizen by individuals impersonating law enforcement under color of authority." I stepped between My wife and her captors pivoted so my body blocked escape routes and logged the scene out loud like it was a fugitive takedown. Time, date, location, actors, identities, actions. Patterson took my creds, scanned the holograms, and nodded, cop to cop, facts heavier than rumor. "Release her," I said to Rob, and his fingers fumbled at the cuffs until they clicked open. Thin, red impressions crowned Alicia's wrists. The sight of those marks on this woman who taught kids their first chapter books, who sent banana bread to neighbors who never returned a dish, brought heat behind my eyes I didn't have time to feel. "Are you hurt?" I asked. "No," she whispered. "Just stunned." Laurel tried to rally. "He's abusing power," she declared to the phone. "Everyone sees it." But the momentum had shifted. Even her comment feed showed confusion now. "Deputy," I said, "I am placing Laurel Carpenter, Rob Willis, and Margaret Willis under citizen's arrest, pending federal custody for impersonation, unlawful detention, and conspiracy to violate rights under color of law, Title 18. Patterson hesitated, procedural caution, public optics buzzing in his radio ear. He asked for a pause to sort jurisdiction. Laurel, sensing daylight for her narrative, lifted the phone. "Even the locals are scared of federal bullies." Within an hour, a clipped version of my reveal hit social media. A black federal agent threatening a white community volunteer. The post stripped everything that preceded it. The cuffs, the live stream pressure, the forged paperwork, and the internet did what it does. Hashtags bloomed. Federal overreach. Gosh, Flowergate. People who didn't know us decided who we were by who we weren't, and my office phone lit like a switchboard from 1978. My supervisor's voice landed without preamble. "Marcus, tell me we're not waking up on CNN because of marigolds." "Sir," I said, "they impersonated officers and detained my wife on our property. I identified only after observing a felony." "Document, don't debate," he said. "Preserve everything. No press." We went into evidence mode. Alicia drafted a witness list in neat teacher print. I mirrored video to a secure drive, cataloged each file with chain of custody notes. And something remarkable happened while the internet chased outrage. Our real neighbors investigated. Bob Anderson from 2 cabins down, a handyman with a drone hobby and zero patience for bullies, walked over with a laptop. "I pulled county filings," he said. "No HOA exists within 5 miles, but Laurel's been sending violation invoices for a year." He showed me receipts, mailbox color fines, fence height citations, parking penalties, all fake. He had footage, too, Rob velcroing patches on in our lane, Laurel coaching Margaret on what to say to Patterson, and there it was. The line Laurel would never see coming, an alternative narrative with receipts. Patterson came back that afternoon, gravity in his eyes. "Mr. Reed," he said, "I owe you and your wife an apology. We've opened a criminal case on Mrs. Carpenter. The county attorney is preparing charges." The internet still argued about me, but the ridge began to self-correct. People Alicia had waved to for months without return knocked on our door with USB sticks and quiet explanations. She got 300 out of us for a fence that's been there since '92. She told me my boat violated visibility. We live by a lake. She came onto our deck while my mom, the one with dementia, was home alone, said she was allowed. The more we learned, the clearer the picture. Laurel wasn't bored. She was building a shadow bureaucracy around her grief. The why came 2 weeks later after Laurel's big play imploded. She scheduled a federal overreach rally in her yard, papered the community Facebook, called talk radio, and hyped an evidence presentation. By noon Sunday, folding chairs, lined her lawn, banners reading "Stop Federal Bullying" and "Community Rights Matter" flapped in clean mountain wind, and she had a portable PA squealing feedback. About 45 people drifted in. Curious neighbors, a handful of activists who chase outrage the way storm chasers court funnels, and gawkers smelling spectacle. Alicia and I watched from our porch. Patterson arrived and took the microphone. "Mrs. Carpenter," he said, handing her paperwork, "you are served with a restraining order restricting contact with the Reeds pending criminal charges, fraud, impersonation of a peace officer, unlawful detention." Laurel tried to spin the moment into fuel. "See?" she told her stream. "This is what happens when you challenge federal power." Patterson wasn't done. "We've confirmed no HOA exists here. No architectural review committee. Any fees collected were fraudulent." The crowd shifted. Programs folded to fans, arms uncrossed. The comments on Laurel's feed turned. "Where's the HOA charter? Those badges look like Etsy." Then Laurel cued her evidence on a projector, the edited doorbell clip. The file name flashed 2 seconds too long. Show A, role play, V, a final. MP4. You could feel the oxygen leave the yard. "Role play?" someone said. "She staged it," another muttered. Margaret stood, throat tight. "I'm sorry," she told the mic. "I believed her. I was wrong." Rob came next, out of uniform in a threadbare Broncos tee carrying a box. He dumped its contents, patches, plastic badges, laminated authorizations, a spiral notebook labeled enforcement plans, onto the card table. "She said it was community service," he said, voice small. "I needed work. I didn't know." By 1 o'clock, only a dozen people remained, Laurel still live, voice high and brittle. "They've brainwashed you," she insisted. "The county is colluding with feds." Then she said a name that hung like a cracked bell. Emma. No one knew who Emma was, but pain lived in the way the syllables left her mouth. The county learned the rest when Laurel filed her complaint and triggered a deeper background check. 2 years earlier, her 19-year-old daughter Emma died when a texting driver ran a red light. He got a suspended sentence and community service. Grief without gravity can spin into obsession. Laurel had filled binders with rule breakers, mapping which neighbors parked crooked, which teens revved engines, which couples brought down values. Under a tab labeled Fed Employees, Think They're Above the Law, she'd printed my LinkedIn bio and screen-grabbed Alicia's garden posts. A letter she never sent addressed to my wife, read like a rescue note. "I'm saving you from a man who defies rules. It's never about marigolds when it's about control." The court moved quickly. Laurel pled to fraud, impersonation, and unlawful detention. The judge, a Latina in her 60s with a voice like polished wood, looked over her glasses and said, "You use the language of safety to make your neighbors unsafe. Grief explains. It does not excuse." Laurel got a year in county, 2 on probation, $5,000 in fines, and restitution to those she'd fleeced. Part of that restitution funded something that surprised me with how right it felt. Emma's garden. A public memorial bed in the town park planted with native blooms and, at Alicia's quiet insistence, a crescent of yellow marigolds that flare like small suns each June. Margaret did community service teaching kids how to deadhead petunias and water in the morning. Rob completed a course on the legal limits of security work and now runs the park's volunteer sign-in table, every pen chained to the clipboards like a private joke he lets us share. As for us, we stayed. A lot of folks would have sold the cabin and shrunk their lives to avoid seeing the place where someone cuffed the woman they love. But staying felt like the louder quiet. We built a little library box by the road, Alicia's idea, and painted it the blue of her Spellman sweater. Kids trade dog-eared paperbacks now. Parents linger long enough to learn names. I accepted a volunteer consult role with the county to help draft a 2-page Know Your Rights, Know Our Limits sheet the sheriff's office hands out whenever neighborhood disputes threaten to turn into pretend police work. The top line is simple. Verification is not hostility. Ask for credentials. Call the real number. Wait for the real answer. Not everything solved itself. A neighbor I won't name still won't meet my eyes. Some online commenters never corrected their posts. And there are mornings when Alicia still rubs the faint impressions that lived on her wrists for a day, while I sip coffee and pretend I'm only watching the clouds. But then we walk the park path and wind moves through Emma's chimes, welded from retired cuffs and misprinted badge blanks the county donated, hammered into soft bells by a retired metals teacher with hands like river stones. The sound is mournful, then kind, like the long exhale you make when you finally set a heavy box down where it belongs. One Saturday in late spring, we saw Laurel there on community service hours, kneeling in the dirt, pressing seedlings into the earth the way my wife had the morning everything cracked. She didn't look up. We didn't say anything. Some apologies arrive as work. Some forgiveness is a gate you nudge open with your shoulder over time, not a ribbon you cut with scissors and applause. People ask what I'd change if I could rewind to the binoculars and the clipboard and the first click of a camera turned courtroom. I'd trust Alicia's forecast sooner. The way black women scan the horizon and are right more often than the world credits. I'd walk across the lane and say, "Ma'am, I can see you're concerned. Let's verify together." Maybe nothing would have changed. Maybe everything. What I know is this: authority that needs costumes is just appetite. Real authority checks itself. It knows when to slow down, when to get a second angle on the footage, when to see the person and not just the story that flatters your fear. The cabin is quiet again most days. The garden flares yellow in summer. Sometimes neighbors honk when they pass, and sometimes they pull over, take a marigold cutting, and ask Alicia the same question. How far apart should I plant these? She tells them 6 to 8 inches, smiles, and adds, "Closer if you want a riot of color." Then she looks at me and squeezes my hand. Our tiny signal that says the weather is fair, the forecast is friendship, and our field guide to surviving other people's certainty will always begin with the simple things that grow when you let them. If this saga taught our ridge anything, it's that community can be built by policy or by practice. The policy is 2 pages on a clipboard now, laminated so it doesn't smear in the rain. The practice is a bench under an aspen with a small plaque that reads, "Emma's Garden. May we honor with care what we could not control with rules." On windy afternoons, the chimes sound like a promise kept. On still mornings, I swear I hear something else in them too. The faint echo of a cuff falling open, a door that stayed hours, and a story that could have ended with bitterness, but chose, stubbornly, to bloom. If you like this story, hit that like button, share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more HOA tales and real-life neighborhood drama each week.